various issues. I think in terms of birth control and stuff like that. So
Yes.
that was your upbringing. Did you feel anything when the Pope died? Do you feel any feelings about that kind of thing as a former Catholic?
You're triggering me right now. I'm still processing it, Piers, and I hate that you did this to me on camera, and I have to go through my grief. No, I mean, we were talking in our meeting today about what, should we talk about it on the show on Friday, and I said, I think it's, first of all, look, I know there are 1 billion Catholics, and many of them do care, but...
I am one.
Oh, okay, great.
Just to, FYI.
No, I'm glad you threw that marker down, bro. It's just more interesting to me who the next cross-dresser is going to be. I mean, this guy was, a mixed record, I think we would say. Did he move the needle a little forward on liberalizing the church? I mean, you mentioned my father. By the way, for the people listening and might think, oh, he found out his mother was Jewish, then he quit the church. Nothing to do with each other.
No.
It's just that around that same time, I was about to receive my first communion. First communion I did, my, confirmation. And that's why I don't have a middle name, because I never did it, because my father did pull out of the church at that time, just because he did not like the politics of Pope Paul. He loved Pope John, who was the liberal pope, and liberalized a lot of things in the church. And my father, a good democratic liberal, it was a period after the Kennedy assassination. The country was in a cynical mood. And, my father loved Kennedy and he loved the Pope. And, for an Irish Catholic, that was a great time. And then Pope Paul came in and, he was kind of old school. And I think we went back to, turning our back on the congregation during the Mass, all that kind of stuff that Pope John was good at getting rid of. I think the folk masses started then, a little more hip, and to the people. And my father would meet on Friday. I think a lot of people around the world who couldn't afford it, that was a big thing when they lifted that. So food wouldn't go bad, shit like that, practical stuff. And my father just didn't like this Pope Paul to the point where he did, stop us going to church, which was like the greatest day of my life. I didn't care why it was, or,
You went every Sunday. I mean, you were a proper...
Every Sunday. And catechism before church, where you learn, and then the training, the first communion, which traumatized me. But so
Did you ever go to confession?
Of course.
Did you?
Of course you went to, how could you, my heart was beating out of my body. First of all, it's just creepy. It's in this little booth and the guy's sort of on, you kind of can see him opaquely, and you think, you're 7 years old, you think he's got the power to do anything to you, and like you would, what sins could you possibly commit at 7 years old?
In your case, I would think that you probably had found a way.
I don't know. I was a scared little child. I didn't know. What sins could you do at 7? I don't know. I don't remember. That's a great question. What sins? I would love to find deep in the recesses of my mind, what did I tell the priest? Because I remember thinking, well, I can't go in there empty-handed. That'll look suspicious. So, but I wasn't masturbating. I didn't think about women. Lying, I don't remember even lying, I don't know. But my mother did tell me, after my father died, that up until the end of his life, he was a little conflicted about it. He was raised in a Catholic era where, first of all, just marrying a Jewish person was not cool. Fear, because nuns were mean to me. I mean, in catechism, priests, they didn't do anything to me, and I'm a little insulted. I was a very cute kid, so their loss is all I can say, Piers. Anyway, I'm glad you stuck with it. Somebody's got to stick with it.
When was the last time you went to confession?
Oh, confession.
I mean,
well, it must have been right before we quit when I was around 13.
Right. So you've got, well.
Yeah, there could have been some sins then that would be more interesting. I certainly was
Well, I'm more wondering if you went back to confession now.
Oh.
The full scale of post-13 sins to today.
If I went to confession now, odds are the priest is the one who had more to confess than me. Let's be clear about that.
I've been in America for nearly 4 weeks on this trip, and it seems to me only 3 people have been in the news that entire time: Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Bill Maher. So my first question is, do you like being the story rather than talking about the stories?
It comes with the territory. I never try to do that. It's a little more
You're that one person that was watching this
going on in the week, but I've been through it enough that
I hope the other side of you.
It's like it's actually flattering that people really think that I have somehow have this importance, which I plainly don't. It's ridiculous. I was offered a chance to actually sit down for an extended period of time in a private setting with the one person who has dominated all of our lives, whether you like him or not, for the last 10 years. That's just not deniable. I took it. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't take it. Just can I see the Trumpadopoulos up close? I'm going to get to see it, and then the only thing that bugs me about it is they don't give me proper credit for it. And then I went back to my day job, tearing him a new asshole, and never stopped before the dinner, never stopped after the dinner, and during, because I said lots of things to him that you would think liberals would love that a guy said right to his face. You didn't win the election, and birtherism was vile, and what? I said to him, you're scaring people. Why do you want to scare people so much? So, I haven't changed at all, and the fact that it made so many people hysterical, not most people, by the way. I mean, I've certainly heard from zillions, and it's mostly very positive. But yeah, there are some people, sometimes surprising people.
From tariffs to market turmoil, things are looking pretty rough out there. Well, our sponsor, American Hartford Gold, has an answer. There are many new threats to financial stability: a full-blown trade war, a fluctuating stock market, an uncertain bond market, stubborn inflation, and colossal national debt. If you're still relying solely on paper assets, you could be heading straight into the storm. So what is the solution? Well, a simple and tested one is to get out of the chaos and invest in something real: physical gold and silver. American Hartford Gold is a company you can trust. They've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and a proven reputation for making the process simple, safe, and smart. You can have gold and silver delivered directly to your doorstep or placed into a gold IRA with major tax advantages. Mention my name, Piers, for up to $15,000 in free silver on your first purchase. Call 866-692-2474 or text Piers, that's P-I-E-R-S, to 65532, or follow the link below. Well, let's talk Larry David, because you're friends, aren't you? Were you friends? Are you friends?
Yes, of course. I mean, this wasn't, my favorite moment of our friendship, but, look, I don't want to get in too much into that, but I think the minute you play the Hitler card,
that's what I think.
You've lost the argument.
Yes.
And also, I must say, come on, man. Hitler, Nazis, nobody has been harder about and more prescient, I must say, about Donald Trump than me. I don't need to be lectured on who Donald Trump is. Just the fact that I met him in person didn't change that. And the fact that I reported honestly is not a sin either. But, to use the Hitler thing, first of all, I just think it's kind of insulting to 6 million dead Jews, who, that should kind of be in its own place in history. And, I know people can say, well, we're just comparing it in this way. Well, It's an argument you kind of lost just to start it. It's just, look, maybe it's not completely logically fair, but Hitler has really kind of got to stay in his own place. He is the goat of evil, and we're just going to have to, I think, leave it like that. So, you know, did I think that was appropriate? No, but people have the right to.
Did you know he was going to do it?
Of course not. And people.
So how did you find out?
You know, my publicist said, this is going on today and you should know it. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, I mean.
Have you had any contact with him since?
No. And that's okay. Look, my whole
like
reason to go into the White House, you know, I said it right at the beginning of the speech I made about it, was, you know, talking to Kid Rock right here, and we were just like, there's got to be a better way than just hurling insults from 3,000 miles away. I mean, maybe, you know, nothing will come of this, but what I know nothing will come from is pretending to ignore the person who has all the power. Democrats have no power. So to think that your method of running out of the room screaming, I'm not talking to you, maybe my thing has a 1% chance of succeeding. Yours definitely has 0.
No, 0. And the final thing I'd say about the Larry David thing,
I would argue, try to figure out what that 1% is. Like, what are you going to get out of this? Is probably Donald Trump is unreasonable. You can't reason with a person like Donald Trump. You can't reason, like, because he has a cult following. He knows he has a cult following. He's a dictator. He knows he's a dictator. He knows he's the most powerful person in the world, and he's willing to weaponize that against his own people, even the people that voted for him. He's willing to say, fuck the Constitution, fuck due process. I see nothing that can be reasoned with Donald Trump. I don't know what percent you're talking about, but when it comes to actual reasoning with him, there's 0%. There can only necessarily be combat, political combat, not physical combat. But like, you can actually only combat it. You can only actually fight it in the political realm. I don't think there's going to be reasoning with that guy. Is he Hitler? I wouldn't call him Hitler. Of course not. Hitler is I wouldn't dare downplay, the Holocaust by calling him that. However, I do feel like this regime is showing fascist-like traits, if that makes sense. That's what I'll say. But yeah.
Just like you, the moment I saw Hitler, Nazi, okay, I get it. It's that very tired old trope. In fact, on your show once with Jim Jeffries, he told me to fuck off on your show when I said Trump is not Hitler. He hasn't been responsible for the death of 12 million people, including 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. And ever since then, I've just thought every time I see it, this is a ridiculous analogy. But the thing about the point people made on social media about Larry David was that he's been conspicuous by his silence since October the 7th, for example, not said a word. You've been conspicuous by the support you've given Jewish people on your show. And
the state of Israel.
Yeah.
And also tearing a new asshole to the, what do they call them? I used to call them that, useful idiots, who take up the cause of some of the most illiberal people in the world. And I'm talking about Hamas. Okay. Where they are now, finally we see these protests from the from the people in Gaza against Hamas, because of course when the useful idiots talk about oppressors, who's really the
misinformation
oppressor of the people of Hamas? It's Hamas. That's who puts their own people purposely in harm's way. That's their whole strategy, is like, well, we can't win this war militarily. The way we can win this war is get enough of our own people killed on purpose so that world opinion, the useful idiots, will fall for that and blame Israel.
That's the dumbest take I've ever heard. Israel knows. Okay, I don't understand. Israel can stop at any given point in time. Israel can stop what they're doing. They can stop indiscriminately bombing Gaza, misplacing Palestinians, and having the president of the United States actively attempt to deport them out of their own fucking nation. They can stop this, Bill Maher, at any fucking time. They should understand that they're not doing. If Hamas is a terrorist group, so is the IDF. Something's gotta give. You now know that you are most likely, every time you drop a ball, killing innocent civilians. Period. You know this. You know if you do hit Hamas, you're probably getting one out of every strike. And then there's just another person to replace that one person. You're not going to defeat an ideology. Israel knows this. Netanyahu knows this. Trump knows this. Piers Morgan knows this. Bill Maher is smart enough to know this. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. Israel can just stop doing it and take back its fucking PR. It can stop and put the ball in the court of Hamas to talk about these hostages. And speaking of the hostages, if I want to get my hostages back, maybe I don't want to blow up the fucking place they're in. Just my fucking opinion.
That is the whole strategy.
That is the strategy. And some people are clear-eyed about that, and many people are not.
Do you think if you're going to write op-ed pieces for the New York Times attacking you for effectively sitting for dinner with Hitler or the new Hitler?
I'm also trying to figure out who the useful idiots are when he's referring to. I'm guessing pro-Palestine supporters, people who are out there saying free Palestine. I guess those are the Hamas sympathizers because they're not actively, I guess because they're actively protesting Israel, which for somehow in today's day, saying free Palestine translate into being anti-Semitic now. I'm guessing those are the useful idiots. There's no Hamas ideology being pushed out by individuals who are protesting at these college campuses. Nobody's screaming pro-Hamas. They're condemning Israel. They want the strikes to stop. I think everybody in the world, except for a few people, except for people in America, is calling this a fucking genocide. We're the only fucking group of individuals who see absolutely no problem with what Israel's doing, who has a problem funding Ukraine to defend itself, right? But we have absolutely zero problem with funding Israel to just destroy a nation that can't defend itself. It's the fucking hypocrisy for me. To call them useful idiots. I would say useful idiots are people like Bill Maher who can't look past the fucking lenses of, okay, well, hold on. Let's look at this strategically, right? You're not going to get rid of Hamas. You're not going to, right? You're not going to get them out. So why not work with what the solution, the closest solution was, which is just two-state solution. Why not just work towards that? Why not get them back to the table? They've been at the table plenty of times. But you know, as I know, that Israel's going to be like, fuck that. We're just going to keep striking them. This is no longer about October the 7th. This is just about eradication.
You should perhaps be a little bit more vocal in the area we've just discussed about Israel and the Jewish people, rather than have a deafening silence about that. I mean, people are accusing him of moral cowardice and hypocrisy.
Well, I mean...
Play the Hitler card, but won't actually talk about the ones who are probably the most similar to the thinking of Hitler, which is Hamas, who want to kill all the Jews. I mean, you get my point.
That is an interesting irony. Yes. I mean, look, I don't want to make this constantly.
And also, is this these two individuals? They exist in misinformation. I'm actually fucking surprised that Bill Maher. I'd never really heard his take on Palestine and Israel, but this is like the first time actually hearing about it, or his stance. But they're living in misinformation. I need proof that Hamas this entire time has want to eradicate the Jewish community or eliminate Israel. I want to hear like the actual proof, and I know there's history involved, but I want to hear from the October 7th to now. Is that what the case is? If it's not, then I don't know.
Personal with me and Larry. I mean, we might be friends again. I don't know. You know, I can be. Well, I mean, I can take a shot, and I also could absolutely take it when people disagree with me. You know, that's not exactly the way I would have done it, but you know, again, let's go. The irony. Let's go back to what my original thing was. There's got to be a better way than hurling insults and not talking to people. So, you know. if I could talk to Trump, I could talk to Larry.
You see, I'll say this. To say that there's a better way of talking to people than to throw insults, again, you have to think about the people you're talking about. It's one thing to say, hey, let's talk with J.D. Vance. We can have a conversation with J.D. Vance. Okay, fine, maybe. I don't know enough about J.D. Vance to be like, oh, he's just not someone we can conversate with. But I know Donald Trump, who presents himself out to be this fucking person, that he's not somebody you can conversate with unless you fucking bend the knee and kiss his ass. You can see if you watch these press conferences, he consistently shits on Collins because she asks the actual questions that should be asked and then kisses OAN's ass when OAN finds specifically something to kiss fucking at Donald Trump's ass about. You can't have a conversation. He doesn't want to have a conversation. He only wants people to acknowledge him. He only wants people to admire him. He doesn't want confrontation. And like that's why you can't have a conversation. This is why I do not take that seriously. If he's referring to Donald Trump, I don't take that serious. He's not somebody you can reason with. Just because you have one good night with him. Come on.
Larry David too. You know, I could talk to anybody. I do it right here. I will talk to
If he was sitting here,
almost anybody.
if he was sitting here now, what would you?
And like honestly, it's not on us to be completely. If you're a Democrat, it's not on the Democrats to actually reach across the aisle. It's been tried. Obama tried. Kamala Harris ran on trying. I believe Joe Biden tried. There was a lot of times with the Democratic presidents or Democratic leaders or Democratic people in the House or the Senate, they tried to reach across the other aisle and let's meet middle ground. But never once have I seen a Republican do so. Never once have I heard like a Republican leader or anybody running for office for any sort of Republican seat, whether it be the presidency, Senate, vice, whatever, have I ever heard them talk about, hey, let's work on being bipartisan. I never heard that coming from the right, ever. So I honestly don't feel like the onus is on the Democrats to stop slinging insults, right? Because the Democrats have been trying to do it the right way, the peaceful way, the respectful way for the longest periods of time, and it's gotten us absolutely nowhere. I think people are actually tired of doing it that way. I personally am tired of that. Like, let's just shit on them some more. Let's put our foots on their necks when you can. Like, why let them breathe? Like why? It's not getting us anywhere playing these fucking games that Cenk Uygur and Bill Maher and Piers Morgan wants to preach. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's too late. It's 2025. We got 4 years of this fucker in office. And like there's absolutely no way you actually believe this shit.
You say to him?
I'd say Piers Morgan kept trying to ask about you, and it got over the top. So I said, so yeah, that's it.
Who wouldn't you want to have sitting here?
Oh, there are people who are just pointless, to the Klansmen or neo-Nazis or things like that plainly are beyond the pale. There's no argument.
The Kardashian?
They've been here. Chris has been here. It's a case by case basis, but basically. There are one of the problems with the far left is that their ideas of purity are so unrealistic, if nothing else, in a country where Trump did win 2 elections.
Yes.
I mean, you just can't write off. I know I saw it after the election. There was a lot of people who some I know and some are friends, but their whole attitude was, we're a bad country. That's what it is. We have nothing to be sorry about with the way we ran our election, or it's just we thought the country was full of good people, and they're actually full of really shitty, horrible people, deplorables. That whole thing, calling them and thinking of them as deplorable. And I just don't think of a Trump voter as necessarily deplorable. He could be, absolutely. And so could someone who voted for Kamala Harris be deplorable in their own way. Now, it's also not equivalent. I make no fuzz on.
No, I'm gonna argue about this point. Yeah, you can absolutely call MAGA, if anything, deplorables. Like, just if I run down the list of things, like trans would like the trans community rights, or just like have health just to exist. People in the mind are gonna be like, trying to rip my head off of that. If I talk about trans women and women's sports, I'm gonna get our head ripped off of that. If I talk about abortion and women should have the rights to their, should have bodily autonomy and should have rights over their own body without government intervention, I'll get my head ripped off of that. There's a lot of things that we just don't agree with morally with the right, with the Republicans, especially MAGA, that just like, they are a bunch of deplorables. They're hateful. They're hateful motherfuckers. They try to overthrow the election. They had a guy run over a bunch of people in Charlottesville. Like, I don't know any equivalent to the left of a MAGA. I don't know any equivalents. I don't know. I guess I get
on it all the
tired of
time.
hearing
I'm
that.
very clear about it. I think the right is more dangerous. I think what's going on in this country is a shit show. I mean, shout out to my writers, because we have been as hard on Trump as we ever have. The stuff we do, I mean, if you think I'm the guy to avoid because I'm not going to be hard on Trump now, you're missing actually still, excuse my immodesty, the sharpest, hardest, funniest taking down of MAGA Nation and the right. And, the thing is, I'll also do it on the left but they're not in power now. So they're not getting as much from me, as they shouldn't.
Did you hear from Trump after your monologue after the dinner?
I'm not going to comment on any of that. I mean,
I'll take that as a yes.
I mean, we're not buddies.
The IRS is the biggest collection agency in the world. Enforcement has ramped up in 2025, and if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, waiting is not an option. The longer you do, the worse it gets. Smart move is to get ahead, but never contact the IRS alone. Let the experts at Tax Network USA handle this for you. Why? Well, not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct. So you also had a Democrat Party that was getting so extreme to the left with this woke progressive agenda. I would watch you week in, week out. And I was saying the same stuff because I think politically I'm probably not far apart from you.
No,
and I was like, I have nothing in common with this. This is
Election now that they have, he's got his guy in at the FBI. This is what I kept saying. What if he wins again? He's going to replace, the people who stopped him the first time. The Ratzenbergers in Georgia who would not say, "Okay, I'll find you 11,000 votes." The decent Republicans said no. They're gone. This is what I was warning about. Now the head of the FBI, the Justice Department, these are all complete Trump loyalists. Obviously, we see it at the Defense Department. I mean, in that world, he fired the guy who was his own appointee of a commission, the Election Commission, the long title I don't remember, but something like Security and Cyber blah, blah, blah Commission. And this guy said this election, the 2020 election, was the freest and fairest, and he wouldn't. Now he's going after that guy for basically, he wants to prosecute someone for telling the truth.
Well, what does it say
about elections?
But what does it say, Bill, about the Democrats? That Trump was a very divisive president first time round, and then he would argue he had his whole 4-year, 10-year torn apart by the pandemic. There's perfectly valid reasons why partly that's true. But then he was 4 years, or 2 years in the wilderness. Then he made this extraordinary comeback, which was almost totally linked, I think, to what they call the lawfare assault to try and jail him, often over the most trivial stuff like the Stormy Daniels thing, which was the one they finally convicted him on. So
was it Eugene Carroll trivia, like forcibly penetrating a woman without their consent?
Also the Democrat Party that was getting so extreme to the left with this woke progressive agenda. I would watch you week in, week out. And I was saying the same stuff because I think politically I'm probably not far apart from you.
No,
and I was like, I have nothing in common with this. This is lunacy. When you're trying to argue.
Not for nothing, we're getting old. You're not gonna have enough. We're getting old, right? We're not gonna necessarily have enough in common with what the next generation's going to want. We're all going to be dead someday. So if there's a new wave of things coming, then that should be expected. That should have been expected. So this whole woke bullshit they keep talking about is just them just being horrified that their ideology is going to be replaced and no one's going to remember their names.
I told the British Prime Minister yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer, because in Britain there was there's a Supreme Court ruling that a woman is a woman. And a trans woman is not a woman.
Right.
And the British Prime Minister actually came out and said that in light of this, now that he'd had this clarity, we can all move forward. Because he'd said before that only, I think, 99% of women don't have a penis. Right? But my point being, this is the Prime Minister of my great country who needed to be told by a court what a woman is.
Right.
And this is where the left have found themselves, right? What is the solution for the Democrats?
I am a man. Well, I am one of the two sexes that Trump is recognizing. But I also understand it's not that simple. Somebody was here, maybe it was Charlie Kirk, and I was surprised that he doesn't think there's such a thing as trans. I do. I just think again, there's always a centrist position to me that's so easy if people would just be reasonable. How about just, first of all, kids, too young to understand any of this. Just leave it out. Just leave it out until they're old enough to. They can't understand drag when they're 5.
I got something to
I
say
don't
about
know if
that
it's
one.
hurting them, but it's like.
So, like, when we talk about leaving the kids out, I get it, right? You want to protect your kids from certain things. You want to be able to teach your kids. My only fear about every time I hear this, my only fear is like, okay, what are you going to teach your kids? When are you going to teach them about it? Because they have to know about it. You don't want your child going out into the world ignorant. And then the next thing you know, they get canceled for something because they don't understand, because they grew up ignorant. My ex fear is, how is the parent going to raise? Is the parent going to do it themselves? Are the parent going to teach them like the actual proper ways, the appropriate ways of how to address people who are different from them? Or are they just going to say, hey man is a man, a woman is a woman, anything else, trans doesn't exist? That's the fear. It's like we're just going to keep being a fucking breeding ground of misinformation if we just allow bigots to raise the next generation, bro.
Like, come on, man.
There's facts.
This is adult
just
stuff.
use the facts.
And also,
there's research. Like, why don't people want to research? Why don't old people want to fucking research anything anymore? Why do they just want to shoot off the fucking hip and then be 1000% wrong? But you got so much money, no one's gonna fucking question you. No one's gonna be like, oh man, I think you're wrong. Not him, not Stephen A. Smith, because they're going to agree. And the common factor is that they're all fucking almost 60. I don't know how old they are. They're part of a dying generation. They're part of a dying breed of individuals who refused. They're just so damn stubborn. They refuse to actually look outside the box, Google a few things, read a couple of books, talk to people that are different, bring on people to talk to them about things and try to understand it instead of being almost immediately confrontational like Piers Morgan does. Why not try to educate yourself on certain things? Why do people say trans women are women? Or why do trans women say? There's actual shit and details that you have to get into. Like Bill Maher said, it's not that simple, but we should not just fuck around and say, well, fuck it. Let's stop talking about it. Let's let them be transphobic to people so we can go in the next election. I don't think we have to do that. I think we can chew and walk bubblegum. Chew and walk bubblegum? No. Chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. Yeah. That.
it's not hateful to teach. There is a default setting for humans, and then also teach, but not everybody is. There are minorities that are not. There are gay people, and there are people who are, like, quote unquote, born in the wrong body. Their brain doesn't think like their and that happens. And we should be respectful but don't act like every baby born is a jump ball. We don't know what it is. I mean, a penis? Well, please, if you're gonna.
Hey, look, this is what I'm talking about. No one's doing that. No one's saying that. I haven't heard anybody say once a boy comes out the womb that, he just runs automatically just because he has a penis. He's actually born a girl. No, that's not how it works. But then again, lack of education. I hate the fact that people, these type of big ass platforms, these type of powerhouse names have zero education but speak on these issues.
And I mean technical. I mean, it doesn't
So
really.
people were saying
It
that.
doesn't mean anything. It's a mild indication of something. And we can always cut it off later. All right, I have to cut you off now.
Bill,
always
thank
great
you very
to see
much.
you.
It's great to see you. I appreciate the time in
my
the lair.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent.
That's a nice episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Yeah, I think that's the I honestly believe that you should stop if you don't have the education to sit there and have conversation with other intellectuals. I don't think you should be hosting those conversations. That's just me. I don't want to host a panel or speak to somebody and then try to engage in a conversation where both of us, me or both of us, have no real knowledge. We have no facts, just feelings when it comes to this topic. I feel like that can be extremely dangerous. It can be dangerous to spread the misinformation. It can be dangerous to the community we're talking about. If you don't understand the trans community, trans woman, trans man, non-binary, if you don't understand that, if you don't know what trans means, if you don't know what cis means, if you don't understand it, if you're not cisgender, then you have to be trans, right? Then, like, if you don't understand why people say that, then, like, it's pointless to have this conversation. It's like me refusing to have conversations with people who don't acknowledge that there's a difference between sex and gender. It's like for me refusing to have a conversation with people who don't believe like gender is a social construct. I refuse to have those conversations with people because it only goes one way, and it's never the good one. It never goes in a good way. It's always you run into talking to stupid people. You can give them all the facts in the world, they're not going to give a damn. They're just not going to give a damn. Holy shit.
The Democrats, who had that bruising election loss, they still have some of the same folks in charge. The big news this week, though, is that while Senator Chuck Schumer remains the Democratic leader, his deputy, Democrat Dick Durbin, is retiring at 80 years old after 40 years in office.
Illinois Senator and Minority Whip Dick Durbin made a major announcement just moments ago. He is retiring.
Setting off a mad dash for ambitious Democrats who have been waiting to launch their own campaigns.
I think if you're honest about yourself and your reputation, you want to leave when you can still walk out the front door and not be carried out the back door.
It also comes as you're seeing a lot of rising stars in the Senate.
And so you could really see a changing of the guard here.
The move does open a seat in a probable Democratic state, and there's talk of a generational shift. But there's also renewed pressure on other Democrats. While Durbin was powerful and had joined leadership, the Democrats have had a lot of the same folks in charge of the Senate for a long time. Chuck Schumer is 74, and there have been calls for him to consider stepping aside. That included some calls earlier this year. Then there was discussions about a very popular Democrat in New York, Congresswoman AOC, as a potential challenger to Schumer. Indeed, polling already about whether she could do better than him or put the pressure on him. For his part, Schumer says he's not stepping down. We even discussed this with Senator Cory Booker.
When it comes to passing the torch, yourself, are you even giving that some thought right now?
Right now, I am focused on showing the American people how bad Trump's economics are for them.
There's talk about whether you should be Senate leader for the Democrats. Are you open to that position?
Senate Democrats have a leader, and he's going to remain there.
You saw the setup. What are your thoughts?
Well, having lived through this most of my life politically, being on the heels of a number of folks in the House of Representatives, and I think everyone understands that's the way the game is played. Obviously, I continue to have, for most of my career, a generation. I think a generation in the House was virtually skipped in terms of providing leadership opportunities because maybe people stayed a little too long in the House. Maybe myself being one of them. But I lost my.
I'm about to sit here and watch this show. Shit.
If you want to know how to beat MAGA, you got to study what's happening with Secretary Hegseth, because you're not learning the lesson. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to the Chris Cuomo Project. If you look at what's going on with the Secretary of Defense, you will see why you are always on defense against MAGA. First, I'll break it down for you in terms of the elements of what's going on, and then we'll look at how the agitation, the reaction, and ultimately the failure of many in the media and on the left to do anything about what they see as a huge problem and what can be better. Okay? So, what is going on with Hegseth? He's sloppy. He doesn't understand the right way to do things. But most importantly, he doesn't give a shit about consequences, right? Why? Because he's not going to have any. Here's what you're missing when you look at Signal. You can make it seem like it's a really big deal. Holy cow, you're talking about war plans with people who aren't vetted on an unsafe communication channel? Here's the problem with the analysis. That's all true, what I just said. Shouldn't be on Signal, not supposed to be on Signal, not supposed to be on devices that aren't government vetted and controlled, not supposed to be talking to people that aren't vetted and controlled and have that type of clearance, not supposed to be talking about that kind of sensitive stuff. But why? Why do each of those rules and don'ts exist? Why do those don'ts exist? Because you can screw shit up. You can expose information, make us vulnerable, make troops vulnerable, take away advantage, ruin strategic considerations, right? And on and on and on. Here's the problem with the analysis. Did any of those things happen? No. The attack went off as planned against the Houthis and was successful. That's the missing piece. Hegseth wasn't paid off. Hegseth wasn't giving information in a way that compromised people on the ground, that fucked up the operation, that made it not go well, that, that disputed or distracted from or disturbed the aims and understandings of the administration.
I don't think that's the point, Chris. I really don't think that's the point. I think the point is we shouldn't know a fucking thing about it.
That's
like, we should not know about it, honestly. Even the slightest bit. I shouldn't even see a fucking emoji. Like a part of the emoji of that fucking chat. I should not have seen it. No one should have seen it except for the people who were in that chat. I do not have the same clearance as those motherfuckers, and they were not talking about FanDuel.
Why it's too much heat and not enough light. I know you want the scalp. I know if you hate Trump and hate everybody around him and think Hegseth is the worst person ever chosen as Secretary of Defense, you want him out. It's not going to happen. Not for something where there is no demonstrable injury to Trump. He's never going to give you the satisfaction of the scalp. By going bad on one of his own guys, it makes it look like he made a bad choice. It's not going to happen. And you shouldn't force it when you don't have the high ground. I'm telling you, if it were a Democrat in the same circumstances, you would not be hearing the Democrats saying the same thing. Will they go after their own? Absolutely. And I think it's part of their weakness. They'll say, no, it shows that our standards are real. No, it shows that you don't understand that you're in a binary war, kind of your own design, but you're fighting in a way where you're against your...
I actually agree with that one. I actually agree with that point. I do think that we eat our own a little bit too much. And I honestly feel like that's part of the reason that we lost the election. And that's part of the reason why the fucking the polls for the actual polls for the Democrat is so low. It's too much infighting. It's too much infighting. Like, why the fuck? Like, who are we actually supposed to vote for here? Like, I can understand it. Like, why the fuck are we like? For me personally, I'm probably one of the few people who thought that, of course, Joe Biden was declining, but at the same time, why the fuck are we trying to, like, fucking run a coup this late in the election year, this late in the campaign process to get him out of the fucking race? Why not just let the American people see if they want him or not, right? Regardless if they find out that he's declining. I don't care. Just let the people decide. No, you don't do that. And when Joe Biden says, hey, guys, if you don't think I can do this job, see me at the primary. He literally said that. He said, let's do a primary, hold a primary, let's see what the people want. No one did that. No one did that. And by the time he stepped down, Kamala Harris was given the reins because nobody else wanted to do it. And it only made sense. Literally nobody wanted to join the battle that late because specifically because it would be like political suicide. It would be like why would you want to set yourself up for failure? It would be extremely difficult to win at that point. I'm surprised that Kamala Harris got to where she was when it came to the voting. And it wasn't a landslide, as Donald Trump and other idiots like to say. It wasn't by a fucking landslide. But like I agree with that. I feel like we do it too much. I feel like we call out our own too much. If the Republicans, if Donald Trump was showing a massive decline in that debate, and Joe Biden was speaking just fine, the Republicans, conservatives, they wouldn't say a damn thing. They would just be behind Donald Trump. They would support Donald Trump all the way to the end. And if they had any issues, they'd probably criticize him afterwards, after the election. We got to be the good guys. We got to be goody two-shoes. We got to stop being goody two-shoes. That's my opinion.
Your own and the other side at all times. And I hate the game. I hate the binary structure. I think the parties are the problem. But if you're going to be in that dynamic, you better understand how you play it to advantage. And going after Hegseth for this, you see it in his response. You haven't heard the Secretary of Defense once say that what is alleged is not true. What does he say? This is what you do. You come after me, you gang up, you go after things. Who's he sound like? He sounds like the only audience he cares about, the audience of one, the President of the United States. A man who has never admitted doing anything wrong ever. Ever. You know, he's given all this shine for his kind of premonition, his prediction, his prophecy, his truth, that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for him. Not only is that true, that's not the real deepest understanding of it. He could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and deny it and get away with it. That's what you're missing. Why? Because his voters are stupid and delusional and uneducated and unsophisticated. No, that is not why, and that is not true. It is because they value something else more than what you're
I think they actually are stupid.
Asking them to value, and they don't want to do what you are saying because they see you as the problem. Those two things are killing you, and they keep making you lose. You don't understand several parts of this dynamic that you must if you want to be successful within it. Okay? Why does he come out and blame the media, Secretary Hegseth? Because that's what Trump would do. Why is he now saying he's going to find the anonymous sources? This is one of the great and classical hypocrisies of this binary game. Anonymous sources are bad, except when you need them. I have heard the President of these United States say anonymous sources, it's fake news. And then he has said, I've heard anonymous sources, where he wouldn't give you the names of who told them. Look, if we didn't have anonymous sourcing, journalism would be almost useless in American society. You want people in power to be able to talk without exposing themselves so that they get thrown out of the position of power and they can't give you that information anymore. It's nonsense that anonymous sources are bullshit. It's nonsense. It's a boogeyman. It's a fake argument just used when it's convenient, because they all use anonymous sources when they work for them. And that's not to say that they all bullshit when it works for them. That is true, but that's not my point. Anonymous sources, in my experience, are very valuable, and you reveal what it is when you have to with your bosses and go through your editorial concerns. Now, where doesn't that exist? With the pod people. That's why they're just about hot takes. They're not about penetrating understanding or new information. That's not what they do.
What? Literally, full stop.
They just make you feel a certain way, and that's fine. There's a place for all of it.
Focus on Tim.
If you want to play to advantage, you've got to understand what works and what doesn't. Hegseth ain't going anywhere for how he texts. Do you understand? Now, if he were to leak war plans in a way that compromised the operation, he'd be dead man walking. If he were to say shit about Trump in a way that came out, he might be dead man walking. But ultimately, what is he judged by? Is he doing what Trump wants? Fucking with the media? He's a made man all day. Going after DEI in the military, executing the Houthi operation the way it was. They're up in recruitment. All of these things are what matter to Trump. You can argue what his concerns and considerations are, but they are still his own. And until those are compromised, Hegseth isn't going anywhere. And wanting to chase him on a basis that you know won't resonate only has one upside. What's the upside? That it will matter to the majority. And that takes us to the next point. Your understanding of 80-20 issues in politics. What's an 80-20? It's what it sounds like from the math, where it's overwhelmingly one side.
I'm confused. Are we supposed to focus on that, or are we not supposed to focus? I don't know. Maybe I misheard the ending of his message. I thought he was like, "Hey guys, don't chase him on this." Whatever. Continue.
Killed in prison. Being like, we got to investigate this. Why did this guy who raped all these kids get killed in prison? What happened? Was it a setup? People don't give a shit why someone who touches kids gets killed in prison. And if you champion that cause, you better find a really important principle. Okay, that's really extreme. Give me some more 80-20s. Okay. Trans sports. A female who looks anything like me, other than my lack of facial hair, playing against other girls who look like girls, is an 80-20 issue. People are going to be against it. It seems inherently unfair and an unnecessary compromising of a situation. It is way too much for the very, very few and way too much of a disadvantage to the many. Oh yeah, but it never really happens. It doesn't matter. If every time it happens, it's offensive to the majority, that's an 80-20. Yeah, but trans people have rights too, no question. But the majority have rights also. And your rights end where my rights begin. Your right to do what you want ends where my rights to decide what is done to me begin.
I just got one critique with it. While I can agree that we need to address the trans women in trans sports. I can actually understand the 80-20, right? Because I throw it out, it's not a big deal. Trans women and trans women in women's sports, it's not a big deal because you can't prove to me. Don't put it on my table. Don't bring it up to me if you can't give me like one or two or three trans women that are dominating in their individual sport. The sport that they are in a women's sports, give me a person that's dominating it. Because every case that I've read when it came to people bitching about trans women being in women's sports or competition, you read the fucking context. It doesn't make any fucking sense. The latest one, Sophia Turner, the fencer who decided to take a knee disrespectfully, and I say that with a passion because in sports, when somebody took a knee in sports, it was against racial injustice and the disproportionate treating of black people by the police, by this justice system. It actually meant something. It didn't mean for this fucking grift Sophia Turner person to fucking just sit there and try to I'm gonna get money now, because all you have to do is take a knee, all you do is say the right thing, you're gonna get fucking thrown onto a fucking TV show. And you're gonna make money for it. Just to find out that the person that she took a knee with placed 24th out of 29. 24th out of 29 in that same competition. Which means that while she took a knee, there were a lot more. The majority of women who competed still beat the trans women in that sport. Riley Gaines. When I first heard the story about Riley Gaines, I thought Leah Thomas blew everybody out the water. I thought that Leah Thomas, a trans woman, because there are biological advantages that men have over women, but I thought that Leah Thomas went into this race, this swimming competition, and blew everybody out the water just to find out that Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines tied for 5th place. And what made Riley Gaines salty was that they gave Leah Thomas the 5th place trophy and Riley got a 6th place trophy. I don't know how that works when you're tied for 5th. But then if you take a picture, you look at the fucking trophies, they look exactly the fucking same. I didn't even know that there was a trophy past 3rd place or 4th place. I don't even know what would the fucking color be? White? I didn't even know that existed. It's things like that that annoy me because there are no instances of a trans woman dominating. That's why I don't feel like I don't feel like it matters. I don't feel like it's important.
You, of course, can be trans and you should not be prejudiced against or
but I do agree with the 80-20 politics.
Get to make me.
However, I do not agree that we should, by doing this 80-20, we should discard and toss away a population or group or minority of individuals, because we would be fucking pissed. I would be upset if it happened to black people. If you had to sacrifice our rights or our safety or our protection in order to stop talking about something. Critical race theory, you want to teach black education? That's something that could benefit us if people actually understood the history of this country and why it could actually benefit black people in the future when it comes to interactions with other people from other races. I don't want to be, oh, let's just toss that aside. Let's just throw that away because it's an 80-20. I understand the 80-20, but I think there's some cases we should stand on. There's some grounds we should stand on. We should stand on business on some of these things, Chris. I can understand 80-20, but I feel like we should stand on business every now and then.
You don't get to make me do what you want me to do or say what you want me to say.
And also, you don't have to participate in the sport.
Or think what you want me to think. Now, you can crowdsource a consequence, and that's why social media will always be anonymous, because people will never feel that they can say anything if they're going to have to own it, because you're going to come after them and take their job and their livelihood because you don't agree with their ideas, and you treat everybody like they're a Nazi if they say what you don't like about anything. And that's a mistake, and it's a reason you lost.
No.
Democrats, you got to listen.
No, that's not the reason we lost. We lost the election because we should. Why isn't nobody talking about the protest that was happening? Legitimate. Look at the fucking statistics. Please, anybody who's listening, the one person who's probably watching this or eventually will see this, if you get to this part, first of all, thank you for watching for this long. But if you ever get to this part, look this up, right? If you were to run for president, be the third party, right? And you were able to acquire the number of people, if you were able to acquire the votes of the people who were eligible to vote but didn't vote, you would be president of the United States right now. You would be president of the United States right now. We lost the election because people didn't show up for both sides. That's why nobody was interested in this election, because they didn't trust anybody to do what was right for them. I'm so sick and tired of saying the Democrats lost because we didn't make a connection. Oh, fuck that. There was no connection made by anybody. There were more voters per, if you were to line up the no votes, the people who decided not to vote against the people who voted for Trump, Trump loses. If you were to do the same to Kamala Harris, Kamala loses. There was a massive pool of people who did not vote this time around. And it wasn't because of the Democrats alone. It's because of the state of this fucking nation. I understand why nobody would want to vote when we allow somebody who tried to overthrow the fucking government to run again.
Listen to me. You're not being strategic, you're not being tactical, and you're not being honest. See 80-20s for what they are. Give me another. Garcia. Garcia is another George Floyd. Meaning what?
Shit.
This is not a great guy. This is not a guy to hold up as some kind of...
This is what gets you canceled. Now, I honestly feel like Chris Cuomo, right? Or I respected, wants to get canceled. Because when you're talking about George Floyd, you sound like every other fucking white Republican, conservative MAGA head who thinks that, or maybe you think that Derek Chauvin, like Ben Shapiro, thinks he deserves an a pardon for that. Chris, that's probably the worst take that you can ever say, because when you're talking about, it wasn't about who George Floyd was. The whole world saw that shit. I don't know if he was on CNN when it happened in 2020. The whole world, we sat there, we were forced to watch it. We couldn't go anywhere. It was a lockdown. It was a pandemic. We all saw that shit. We all saw him stating that he could not breathe for 8 minutes while that motherfucker's knee was on his neck. When you guys say, when white people, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to say it because I believe that this is what this is, because this is a white man who is about to tell me, as a black man, that we shouldn't prop up George Floyd or incidences. What about Trayvon Martin? What about Mike Brown? What about Fernando? Did those people just deserve to die? Because, like, oh, we shouldn't, these are bad people, they have a fucking past. Everybody has a past. Does not mean that they deserve to get executed, and we do not need to prop them up and make noise about it. That doesn't make any sense. That's not an 80-20. That's not an 80-20 political point. You're trying to tell the American people to stop fighting. You rather get on your knees and suck the cock of fucking conservatives and ask us to follow suit. No, I'm not at least. So anybody else can. But that was just a fucking disgusting display. And you're about to go tell us that this is not a good man, this Garcia guy. He was a part of MS-13. Number one, prove it. That's all we ever asked for is fucking due process. The reason this is highlighted is not because of us. It's highlighted because it's highlighted. It is what it is right now. But this man deserved due process. And when it was Chris Cuomo, right? You want us to lose our fucking rights. The same dude, Donald Trump, who said you're gonna lose your fucking country, takes a piss on the fucking Constitution any chance he gets. Like, I'm so confused with this take now. I can understand the 80-20 concept, but I don't understand being a whole bitch about it. I will never be a bitch. I can understand approaching things differently, but I'll never be a little bitch about it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm about to eat crow and listen to what he's going to say. But I hope he's not going to say that this is a gang member.
If a moral agent, no. As with George Floyd, there is an overarching moral argument and principle of law and equity and justice involved. You don't kill people while arresting them in nonviolent situations because you can or want to. That's bad policing. That matters. The fact that the guy you killed was kind of a piece of shit doesn't matter in terms of the principle. Due process is for everyone, different degrees, sure. I, as a citizen, get more due process than a green card holder, than someone who enters on a visa, than someone who enters illegally. There are gradations, levels, and that's okay. It's recognized within the 5th and 14th Amendments and the jurisprudence thereof. But just because I don't like your face, just because I don't like what you did, just because I don't like who you are, doesn't mean you are denied due process. Stick with the principle. Don't make it about the person. That was the mistake with George Floyd. And I'm ignoring all the defund the police bullshit. That was one of the ugly manifestations of the radical left and your extremist flank. That was as bad as any of the MAGA shit, as far as I'm concerned.
Saying defund the police, I would ask him, what the fuck does that defund the police mean? There has to be some sort of checks and balances somewhere. And if you're giving funding to a police officer, to a police specific station, if they're meant to protect and serve, and they're coming out with all these fancy cars, these fucking military equipment locked up in their back, but they're not doing anything. They're not showing us that they actually give a fuck, or they're not doing their fucking job. Why are they having all this money? Defund the fucking police. Reform that shit, right? That's what I prefer to say. I don't want to say defund the police, but I understand it because I understand where they're coming from. I understand what that means. Once again, this comes with no education. You're speaking on things and you don't know anything about it. Why not look it up? What do they mean, Chris Cuomo, by when they say defund the police? What do they mean by that? Do they mean like literally go in there and take all the money away from the police station or police officers? Does it make any fucking sense? Or defund the police is asking for, hey, let's actually look at what the fuck they're doing and doge the fuck out of them. If they're not doing their fucking job, yeah, they shouldn't be getting funded like crazy. It's okay when Doge is doing it, right? To random fucking institutions. It's okay when Donald Trump is in office and that's being called out for. But when a Democrat's in office and when black people are angry and we want answers and we want people to suffer consequences because we're tired. Calling black people, calling Black Lives Matter people who are fucking upset and pissed, radical left. If that is the radical left, I am fucking radical left. I'll be radical left.
And it was proof that these fringes dominate our dialogue.
I'd rather be a radical left than pussy like this. Like, I'd rather do that. This is fucking disappointing coming from Chris Cuomo. I get the 80-20, but the fucking examples you're coming up with is fucking stupid.
AOC has done nothing meaningful in Congress. She's done it all on social media. And she's one of your leading names in who's going to be president. Do you not get this concept of 80-20? She's an 80-20 loser all day long. Why? She is clearly catering to a minority. She's her own version of MAGA. She's looking for an outraged enclave. She's not about the majority. She's not about consensus. She's not about...
Okay, I'm done with this fucking video. It's just stressing me the fuck out. I'll say this about Chris Cuomo in this fucking video. I'll probably come back to it in a later date. Probably fucking tomorrow, fucking Twitch or some shit like that. This is what disgusted me about that is his last couple of statements. Number one, AOC, you might not like, hate or love AOC. Her and Bernie are doing something that fucking matters. Not like me sitting behind a fucking computer screen talking, not like Chris Cuomo, all of us fucking cussing as if it makes his point drive home even more. Behind a fucking computer screen. They're actually out there doing something. Alright? They're actually running around. People are fucking listening. People are gathering. And honestly, I feel like that eats him up inside. It eats a lot of people who don't like it up inside because people are listening to them and they're not listening to you. You see, like, we're not all the same. Nobody, like, we're not a monolith when it comes to people who vote. The voters are not a fucking monolith. We all don't want the same thing. We all don't see through the same lenses as some of us walk different lives, live in different cultures. So AOC going out there and speaking to people in person and trying to reach the minorities who are never fucking heard of, you piece of shit, and like who are never listened to. I employ it. If the Democrats never win another fucking election, because this is what they do, because AOC goes out and she continues to talk to the people that fucking matter, and not to the majority of people who don't give a fuck about this country and rather just see it and rather become cucked and allow the fucking Constitution to just be pissed on, then I rather rock with AOC. I'd rather rock with Bernie. I'd rather rock with Cory Booker. I'd rather rock with Cory Booker, who decided to do something and say something. 24, 25 hours standing up straight. He did something. We're not doing anything. I'm just going back and forth with like 2 people watching this shit. But I'm just feel better speaking my fucking mind. I don't know when Chris Cuomo did this like fucking flip. It is kind of disappointing, but then again, I need to stop putting my faith in white people. I'm sorry. Anybody who hears that, I'm sorry, but like this is probably the most privileged take I've ever heard. Especially when you're talking about, you have no facts. You're talking about 80-20. I get it. There's some things we don't need to fight for, but I'll be damned if one of those things if one of the things we stop fighting for are individual rights, our injustices, is fighting against injustice, or fighting for someone's civil rights, or somebody's humanity. If you give up on that, you're pussy. Just plain and simple. That's all you are. That's just my fucking opinion. That's fucking crazy. Damn. That's fucking crazy shit to say. I hope you guys enjoyed that.